another episode, and of course we are bringing you a new theme, new champagnes, and we have a new year. Hallelujah.
Hello 2021.
Hello 2021.
Hello,
and bugger off to 2020 because that was a hell of a year for us all. But we start the year with fresh eyes, fresh minds, and that's perfect for us because we are taking you today on the road to Rosé.
Oh.
And there are many of you in our Champagne Club across Australia, but we personally know many of you, and we know that some of you do not like or do not partake in the enjoyment of rosé champagne.
And on the flip side, some of you love it.
Absolutely, you're right. What we want to do is for you today to throw out your preconceived idea about rosé champagne. Come with us on the journey.
Yeah.
We're going to introduce you to rosé from a technical point of view. So there are two methodologies for making rosé champagne, and this is quite unusual, is it not?
It is. I mean, Champagne's still the only area in France, I believe, some of the other European countries that are allowed to make rosé in two different ways, which is the blending of red wine into clear wine before second ferment.
Okay, so slow that down. So we have technique number one, assemblage, white base wine, red wine. So take Pinot Noir out of the vineyard. The skin of the grape has color, tannin, aroma, letting the skin and the juice, which is white, macerate to make a light red style, adding a percentage of red wine and white wine together to give you assemblage rosé champagne.
There you go.
Technique number two, Kyri?
It's a maceration method where you're literally letting the skins dance with the juices.
Tango.
Tango, a little tango.
Tango.
I thought you called him dog.
Yes, my dog is called Tango.
The phenolics or the skin has all the color. It has the aromatic complexities as well, and that comes into the juice. So that's the other way you can do it. So it sort of saturates the skin and the juice together.
And we're going to look at both techniques this month.
That's the Saignée method. The first house we are looking at today is Remi Leroy, or as I introduced it to some of our guests that came to our warehouse, Remi Leroy. Why? Because it's just a bit funny. They're based down in Meurville, right next to Meurville, which is where our friends Drapier are from. Now, if you haven't seen that area, we're in the Côte de Bar. We've gone from Avis and Cremant, all those beautiful areas in Côte de Blanc. We've left the Vallée de la Marne, gone further south, all the way about a good 100 k's, and we're now in the southern tip, the Côte de Bar.
So to give that some context, a lot of people as tourists arrive in the Champagne region and they arrive in Reims or Épinay. Not many people make it down to the south of Champagne. So if you're in your car, you're talking a good 2 to 3 hour drive from the centre of Champagne.
And it's very beautiful down there.
It is incredibly beautiful. You do have some very beautiful rolling landscapes, but you're actually closer to the border of Burgundy than you are to the heart of the Champagne region.
Yes.
So we have a unique soil type down here. We have a mix of Kimberly clay, which is quite soft, quite porous, and Portlandian limestone, which is actually more robust. It's a harder profile.
Right. That's right.
Remi Leroy is a young man. He's a super cool young producer, actually. I love what he's doing. I love his labels. I love his website. I love his design.
Check out his website. Very
super cool.
He's basically paving the way in the more modern approach to winemaking. He is part of Pierre et Vin in Champagne, which is every year they have all the cool growers getting together, like Timothy Strobel, Etienne Calsac, you name it, they're all
cool kids.
And his approach is quite classic in the making of this, but he doesn't do any fining or filtration, which we'll get into later. But the whole approach is very natural at the house, and he farms about 8 hectares with his family. And he's originally studied in Bordeaux as an agronomist and winemaker, and he took those skills back to his winemaking area, and he's producing some really interesting stuff.
Absolutely. So the wine that we are featuring from Remi Leroy is the Assemblage Rosé, incredibly deep colour actually. So
what's the percentage of red wine in this?
It's a 20% red wine addition. Now,
is that quite high?
It is quite high. He's leading the witness. But you know, when you are making an Assemblage Rosé champagne, it is up to you as the winemaker of champagne as to how intense you want that red wine addition to be.
Agreed.
You know, you've got a house like Salmon, which is almost a soft salmon colour. You would almost not detect the rosé character in a black glass. And then you've got houses like Runa, like Moët & Chandon, like Remi Leroy, who do have quite an intense red wine addition.
They do, but the main thing is that they come from a much lighter spectrum of red wine. So it's not the red wine you and I know. It's certainly not a Côte or Champagne wine, which is for another day, but essentially a really quite dark red wine made from that region. So it's much lighter.
Being down in the south, you know, you would think that being close to Burgundy that they would feature Chardonnay, but actually in the Orbe, in the Côte d'Ivoire, they actually are predominant with the grape of Pinot Noir.
Yeah, Pinot Noir is king.
Pinot Noir is king in this region. So we have in the base wine, we've got 85% Pinot Noir, we have 15% Chardonnay, and then coming over the top, we have a 20% red wine addition. It is quite an intense wine. And what's really interesting, when we pair it side by side with Demiere, our second house, which is a Saignée de Rosé, there's the same level of intensity almost on both wines. Slightly more of an orange tinge in the Remi Leroy wine. What did you think about it? What were the characteristics for you?
What I loved is sort of like an orangey pink colour. The bubbles were quite vigorous for a rosé, which for me shows a couple of things, mainly youth, but also that they haven't had as much time in the cellar, which is perfectly okay.
Which is also quite normal for rosé champagne.
It's all about freshness. So.
It is about freshness. Very rare do you see vintage rosé, although they exist. And it is about a couple of years in the cellar before they're being released, because you want to see the vibrancy of this red fruit profile.
Yeah.
You know, big basket of red fruits, raspberries, blackberries.
It's certainly leaning towards that savoury end. Yeah. So it's dry, it's fresh, it's savoury. So I always, you know, pitch, you know, something nice and savoury like a Provençal rosé and say, okay, think bubbles and think that, and then you're sort of in that realm.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, please don't drink these champagnes as an aperitif. They are not a pop open and sip before dinner on a Saturday afternoon. These are wines that should be paired with cuisine. They are food wines. And I think personally the reason that people are turned off from rosé as a category is that they drink them as an aperitif style, which is incorrect. You must drink these wines with food.
Yeah, and look, I think there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, Kyla, and I think that because there is a small quantity of tannin, like tiny, but it's there, it's in the colour, right? You can't escape that. Naturally, the tongue's doing something different. It's actually wanting food because tannin by its very nature cleans the tongue. If you're having a glass of red wine, you know how nice that is with food. You just want to keep eating and drinking. It's just that perfect harmony. Same with rosé. So for me, it's probably one of the most versatile styles of champagne and ideal for Australian cuisine because we love barbecuing things. We love throwing shrimps on the barbie, do we? You know,
meat,
grilled
charcuterie
meats and charcuteries and things like that. Perfect. Cheeses, all of those things sit well with it. So, you know, there is a lot more diversity in rosé.
I know that some of you are aware of the diversity between growers in Champagne, but in fact there are so many. And we're lucky enough now to have worked in the champagne industry for some time, and we've got our connections, our colleagues on the ground in Champagne, and we go to them for referrals and recommendations on who we haven't met before, who's hot, who's doing something interesting. And Demiere came forward from one of our colleagues in Champagne and said, you know, you guys have to try these wines. And that's how we were introduced to the Maison.
Absolutely.
So located in Fleury-la-Riviere, so not so far out of Épinay, near Damery.
Yeah, Damery. So, you know, we're in the Vallée de la Marne. Essentially, you know, Meunier is key, but at the same time, there's really beautiful spots for Chardonnay, for Pinot Noir. And the wine that we're looking at today is actually 100% Pinot Noir, isn't it?
It is. So the producers of the house now, we have Audrey and Jerome.
Yes.
So it is A J Demiere.
Yes.
The name of the house. Really interesting wine for today, fermented in a concrete vat, but we'll get into that in a moment.
Sure.
Second cuvee that we're looking at is utilising the technique which is rarer, and that is known as the Saignée technique. And the word Saignée means to bleed. So we're referencing the process that the winemaker goes through by taking 100% of Pinot Noir. It could be Meunier. We've got 2 red grapes in the Champagne region, Pinot Noir and Meunier.
That's right.
It could be
It could be a blend of both.
This is interesting.
And for reference for everyone, Laurent Perrier Rosé is probably the most famous rosé that uses this method and still does after it started in 1986, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so there are, there's a reference point for all Saignés, and I think that's a great one to look at.
It's generally produced though by the smaller maisons because it is a small batch process.
Yes.
You need to do it in small parcels. You've got to get consistency of colour, flavour, aroma. Not an easy thing to do. So generally not done en masse in the bigger houses.
And just that perfect ripeness in the vineyard, because you do want the sort of sweetness of the fruit, but you still want to retain some freshness as well.
So in the Demiere, 100% Pinot Noir, we've got an 18-hour maceration, which is actually on the lighter side, but you know, it all depends on how ripe that Pinot Noir is that goes into the blend, what the vintage was like to determine the intensity, whether that 18 hours is enough or whether it's, you know,
correct. I mean,
short.
And my perception would be that because it was beautifully ripe, they wouldn't need as much time to get the colour that they have. You can see it's really lovely, deep, sort of coral. And in terms of nose or aromatic, for the connoisseurs that are tasting these wines together, if you have them side by side, you'll see that one is more on the savoury spectrum, which is 2 grams from Remi Leroy, and then Demiere has actually got this sort of exuberant,
it's quite pretty,
juby, almost rhubarb you picked up,
hints of vanilla,
all these sort of really quite light flavoursome.
It's a flavour bomb.
It's a flavour bomb.
And it actually lends itself to a different food spectrum. Now, rosé champagne is wonderful with savoury food, but it can also be partnered throughout the meal all the way to dessert. And a strawberry tart with a custard cream, you know, a pastry with wild berries. You've got a whole new repertoire of dishes that could partner beautifully with this wine.
I mean, you could even, we had a really good Lamington recently, you could even play around with chocolates. With the coconut and a little bit of cream and that kind of thing.
And the house do recommend that a chocolate would work with this. And you know, people who know me know that I never put chocolate with champagne. It's just, I know that they're 2 of the world's greatest delights, but I don't do them side by side. But what about classic pavlova full of cream and wild berries?
Yeah, pavlova will work well, as long as it's nice and light, not too sweet. Perfect.
So this particular wine is actually fermented in a concrete vessel.
Yes, 17 hectolitres, which is basically, it's huge, it's massive. It's called a non-blot, and the idea with it is that it doesn't impart any flavour whatsoever. There's a neutrality to the actual material that they're using.
But you are getting some aeration, you are getting some oxygen into
which
the wine.
Is very important for you know, wines made with a little bit of tannin, that kind of way, compared to, say, your oak in Remi Leroy and stainless steel in Remi Leroy as well. So two different vessels as well create very different styles.
Just something to bear in mind, people at home, you do have a Rosé de Saignée in a clear bottle. Wine is very sensitive. We've put it in this beautiful clear vessel so you can appreciate the gorgeous colour of the wine, but it's very sun sensitive. So I wouldn't be leaving this out anywhere where it's got any light exposure.
Top tip.
So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. You have 2 rosé styles. We have Assemblage technique, which is the blend of a white wine base, could be Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, just Pinot Noir, with a red wine addition. And then we have a Rosé de Saignée, which can only be red grapes. That red grape now imparting some tannin, some flavour. You've got this sort of powdery dry coating, so a different finish on the palate. Now, you've got a huge spectrum and a huge style of rosé champagnes. It just so happens this month that the Remi Leroy is a little bit more on the intense side. So you've got 2 similar styles in terms of intensity of these rosé champagnes.
I think that the dividing sort of styles is that this is a lot drier and more savoury, and this has got a lot more upfront fruit, and I think a little bit more thinness for those who like red wine, probably enjoy that very much. But it's about discovery, it's about trying new things, and hopefully we've reset some of those preconceptions. You know, right? Or changed where rosé lies now, and then you can actually get a great scope of wine.
Totally. This is a food wine. These are not session champagnes. You're not going to sit down to many, many, many bottles of these cuvées, and they're rare. They're very small in their quantities, so please take note of that. Think about what you're going to cook with these dishes. Influence the wine with the food, so some duck, some cold meats, dessert if you wish, some seafood. There's a lot of versatility there, isn't there? We hope that you enjoyed both examples this month. We hope you've got a new perspective on rosé champagne. Please make sure you let us know what you think. You can follow us on Instagram at emperor.champagne. If you're not already part of our Emperor community page on Facebook, please sing out to us and we'll connect you in there. But until the next time, please enjoy your wines and we will see you on the next episode.
See you there.
Bye. You're still a bit quiet. You're a bit softly spoken.
I can't help it.
But that's okay.
I've just got a velvety tongue.
So soft.
Do you want me to do some more gravitas
You
with
need
my
to
voice?
learn how to project.
I will learn how to project.
That's deep throat. Projecting.
I love rosé.
That'll do.
I love it.
You know what to do? Project.
Project.
No, that's still deep throat.
How? It's a man's drink. Rosé.
Think if you've got someone over on the balcony that needs to hear you.
Hey, bloody fucking bastard. I'll do my best to talk more clearly and with intonation that is picked up by the microphone.
It's gone soft again. You just like tone down the volume. It's like the weirdest thing. You go backwards instead of forwards.
Because I'm wondering if we're going to tape right from finish.
That's because you don't know what you're fucking saying.